Hello, and welcome back to Rosebud Studios, where we talk about all things storytelling while my dog usually sleeps in the background. Today we are doing kind of a fun video on books about writing. I'm going to review several of them. Over the last probably about 6 months, but especially within the last 2 months, I've read a lot of books on writing just for the fun of it, just to see what's out there, to occasionally address an issue I'm having with writing. And I have found some great ones and I have found some terrible ones. So I thought we'd go ahead and review all of those. I am going to review these while putting on a video of a new profile picture I am drawing for myself so that we have something fun to look at while we review books together. So let's get started.
All right, I am going to jump right in. We're going to start at the bottom of the barrel, the worst of all of the books that I read over this course of trying out new books I'm writing. My first one is Published by Chandler Bolt. I picked this up because I had a copy or a month of Kindle Unlimited, and I just typed in books on writing and publishing on Kindle Unlimited. This came up as like the top rated, and it did have, I think, over 2,000 reviews on it, which said to me, okay, interested. It was so bad I DNF'd it, which I am not a DNFer. I'm pretty good about finishing books, and I just could not. It honestly was gross. This guy was most likely in another life a white sneaker wearing salesman at a used car lot. And he is into writing books just for making money. He goes back and forth between sometimes just saying that outright and other times saying, oh, but no, I do actually like writing, but making money. And the problem also, other than just the sliminess feeling of it, is that what you learn very, very early on is that he is selling a course on how to be a self-published author. And he wrote this book to sell more of those courses. And so the information that you get is extremely basic, and you could just Google this type of information because all of it's meant to just, you want to, pay him for the extra information. You'll need, there's just so much more secrets he could tell you if only you would pay him for more. So yeah, I did not like this. I I DNF'd after a short period of time, and I have no qualms about that. That was a definite no for me. The next one we did was The Truly Successful Writer by Marissa Secoy, I think is how her name is pronounced. Again, a book that just came up on Instagram, and I thought, what the heck, I'll give it a try. It was specifically marketing towards an issue I am having with writing. I am the type of person that tends to get super excited about writing, put down 30,000 words and burn myself out in the process and not write for a couple of months and then do the process all over again. And I'm trying to establish a more consistent, healthy writing life that doesn't require me to just live in these highs and lows. And that's really what the book is about, is finding a way to consistently sit down and write. And again, I'm so angry with this book because I feel like it could have been a really good book. It actually had a lot of actionable information in it. I took notes. I learned about some programs that were really helpful that I've used already. And I really wish that I could recommend this book. However, much like Published, Marissa Secoy wrote this book to sell a course on publishing. And she leaned so hard into that. If I read this whole book and then at the end she was like, hey, I also have a course on publishing. Check it out. Okay, I get that. And sometimes you do write books to sell other products. Also get that. But so much of this book is devoted towards this course. There's even almost kind of an assumption at times that if you read this book, you're going to take her course. And it's on a level where I can't recommend this book. I just couldn't. I'd be embarrassed to recommend this book, even though I felt like it actually did have really solid information and suggestions and habits that you can form to help, and trying to address, what specifically trips you up when you're writing to make it more of a professional practice. I just can't recommend this book. I'm so mad about this. So yeah, if you're out there listening, Maria, just write a really good book about writing and leave it at that. we'll figure out the course thing if we want to, which I have to be honest, like, I do think that she has something to say about productivity in writing because she does produce a lot. I'm not sure she has something to say about selling books because at least under the name Marissa Secoy, I was not seeing a lot of sales. Now, she could have a pen name that she's writing under that I don't know about. I know that a lot of people do, so that might be why. But that's what I would base my decision to buy a course from you on getting published, is your actual sales. And I just felt like a lot of her stuff is just marketed towards selling the course more than it is towards her books. But again, she might have a pen name that I don't know about that she actually sells books under. Again, I don't know. But this one falls flat for me simply because it's just so much salesmanship in it. Next, we have The Happy Writer by Marissa Myers. Marissa Myers is the author of a lot of young adult fantasy fiction novels like the Lunar Chronicles. She's got several big ones. I'm going to say right now, one, I have not read any of her fiction. I'm not really a big young adult writer or reader. But two, I don't think that a writer's nonfiction is anything to judge a writer's fiction by. I think those are two entirely different things. So I'm not here to say Marissa Myers is not a good writer. I'm sure her fiction is very successful. I know people who have read it and really enjoyed it. I am only here to judge The Happy Writer, her nonfiction book that is supposedly the topic behind it is basically like how to stay happy throughout the entire process from ideation all the way through you're, a best-selling author. Every possible step of the way, how to just stay in the groove and keep writing. Again, something I need help with. So I was totally down for it. I actually got this one through Libby. I don't remember who recommended it to me. Someone recommended it. So I downloaded it from Libby. And this book was not for me. Now, I'm going to tell you later in a few minutes why it might be for you. This book was hardcore, not for me. I really disliked the voice, both literally and figuratively. So Marissa Meyer made the decision or was asked to voice the book herself. A lot of authors can voice their own books. Some authors can't. I would put her down as cannot. She does not have a good reading voice. Like, it's very unnatural. And I almost DNF'd it just from that perspective because I hate listening to audiobooks that are badly read. But I think the figurative voice of the book might have also been the problem because it's a very affected cuteness that she's decided to write the book in. So, for instance, she's like, here are a list of writers who came up with their books from dreams. Writer A, Writer B, Marissa Meyer. Hey, that's me. And there's just a lot of that type of thing in the book, and it's very fake feeling to me. And that might actually be her personality, but it does not translate well into this format. It just feels very effective and very affected and very forced. And it happens so often that I started to tune the book out, honestly. I realized I was doing that on several occasions, so I had to keep refocusing myself. But it was just a very annoying way to both write and then badly read the book. Also, Marissa Meyer is in a stage of life where she is a stay-at-home mom, homeschooling her kids while she's writing on the side. So the book is written from the perspective of a stay-at-home mom, and frankly, the voice assumes that if you are reading this, you are also a stay-at-home mom. It just is entirely and completely written to women staying at home with their kids and are writing on the side. And there's a lip service every once in a while to the idea of someone else, another different type of life. But really the whole thing is really centered around that's your life. And so you get a lot of suggestions that really just fall flat. I'm struggling to find time to write. Learn to write while the cookies are in the oven type of thing. And so that was another thing that was just I was really struggling with trying to connect to this book because I'm not a stay-at-home mom. Nothing wrong with it if you are, but this book is just not written towards you if you are not a stay-at-home mom. And she tries to cover so much too in this book, like every possible thing, that you have like entire sections written on subjects that are so banal, I find them to be completely pointless. Like there's literally an entire section where she writes about how one of your problems might be that you're not writing with the pen that really suits you and how you have to go out and find a good pen, and on and on and on. And I'm just like, what adult doesn't know that if they don't like the pen they're writing with, to just go find another one? Why do we need several paragraphs about this? Like adults should know this. So, as you might tell, they found this book annoying and it was not for me. However, if you are a stay-at-home mom who's looking to find ways to write a book, this book might be for you because it's written for you. So you might actually really connect with this. There's also an extensive section because Marissa Myers is a traditionally published writer. She has an agent, she has a publisher, she has a publicist. She does the whole traditional route. There's a very extensive section on like what that's like and the whole experience. And I will say, if you are seeking traditional publication, that probably is going to be a really good resource. I would say you should check at least those chapters out, because we don't really get into like a lot of the mom stuff, or the pens or making a vacation list for yourself, or I don't know. A lot of the stuff could have just been thrown out to me, honestly. But like if you're looking to get into traditional publication, like the whole meat of that section of the book might be a really good resource for you. And I think she has like a really good attitude about it and is really, trying to be as open as possible about things that sometimes might seem like a little bit closed door. So I will say, just because the book wasn't for me doesn't mean it's not for you. I would recommend exploring it if you are A, a stay-at-home mom, you're into the cute life, and B, you're seeking traditional publication. Next, we're going to go to On Writing by Stephen King. I have heard this referred to so many times throughout the years as kind of the holy grail of writing books and like the only book you'll ever need, and on and on and on. And I was kind of honestly intimidated for a long time by this book because people just made it seem like it was everything you would ever need to know type of book. So I finally got an Audible. He reads the book. He is a very good narrator. He does an excellent job. Sometimes it's just outright funny the way he's narrating it. So like, I don't automatically discount, to be clear, writers reading their books. Stephen King, excellent job. Something I did not know, in all the many times I have been told about this book, was that the first section, so that like the first 3 hours, is actually his autobiography. It's never good for me to go into a book not knowing something like that, because then I was like, I thought I was here to read a book about writing. What is this? And like, his biography is interesting, but not, for me anyway, relatable. And it was like I said, on a certain level interesting, but after a while I started to get like, is this going to be like 11 hours of this? Because I thought I was here for writing, and this is just interesting, sort of, at times, getting a little bit old. But then we've gotten to the writing part. This biography does come to an end. We get into the writing part. And for that section, I thought it was excellent. I don't think that he's saying anything that you can't find anywhere else. Like, there's nothing radical. But having it like all there in one section and like you can read straight through, I did think it was excellent information. Had a level of inspiration to it of like, okay, this is what he does when he's like struggling to get through things. And, you have to have your foundation. And I actually answered a grammar question my husband and I had been discussing recently that we could not get like a solid answer on just Googling it. And he was very emphatic about it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with Stephen King. I'm going to choose him over Google being wishy-washy about it. So that section was excellent. I really enjoyed it. I thought we were ending on like a high note there because the writing section, right? Like, it's great. Then he gets into publishing. And I would say if you are seeking traditional publication, do not listen to any advice that he has. Now, like, he admits straight out, he comes from an era in which agents were not necessary. He literally says, I didn't even think about getting an agent until I had made $3 million. A little unrelatable, you know? But then he has this like hypothetical section where he talks about a group of supposed young writers he knew, which, to be clear, this is him talking about this book was published 25 years ago. So young writers 25 years ago. And he gives an example that supposedly one of these writers' query letters sent to an agent and got an agent from. I would not use this advice. I would say steer clear of that advice. It was honestly a very mortifying letter. Just knowing what I've seen, like agents online and talking about what they're looking for in authors, I would be mortified to send that query letter out. If you're seeking traditional publication and you want an agent, talk to people who have queried recently. Talk to people who had to query from the very beginning. You know, again, go check out the section Melissa Myers has on it. But also, like, look at what the agents themselves are asking for, because the agents will tell you what they're looking for in a query letter. Do not put... I mean, there supposedly was an agent out there somewhere 25 years ago that listened to this query letter, but I would highly recommend not talking about things like your wife and like that you spend your money really quickly in your query letter. I'm just saying that kind of, we were on like a high hill, and then we got into that part and I was just like cringing so hard. And overall, I will say, like, I loved the section on writing, but that comparatively wasn't as big of a part of a book as I wanted it to be. Because then after we get through the whole embarrassing agent part, then we get like an entire more section on his accident that he had in, I think, 1999, and his whole process of bounding back from that and writing again. And so, like, really the majority of the book is his memoir. And if you are a Stephen King fan, that might be of interest to you. I thought it was interesting, but not interesting enough that I would never have like read this book just for that. So I don't know if you can get a hold of this book and just read the writing section. I mean, maybe you're interested in Stephen King's life. It is kind of a weird life. He's not living, you know, just the average life. But I will say, like, the writing section is really valuable, and I think it's a really good foundation. Again, nothing really out there, but it is like a good foundational discussion that he's having on writing and his writing process and what helps him get over hurdles and how he makes sure that, you know, his book actually will be enjoyed by readers. That whole section, excellent. So, you know, part of it lived up to its its hype. The part that people talked about definitely lives up to the hype. The other parts of it, you take what you get, I guess. Next, we're going to go to what actually was like a huge book for me and really, really helped me. It has what I feel like is an embarrassing title, especially when we started out this conversation about Chandler Bolt's book published, being just a book about like making money off of books. This book is called Seven Figure Fiction by Theodora Taylor. I think she published this one under the initial T, Taylor. And I was like kind of leery about a book like this with this title, but then another author that I was listening to on YouTube said it really helped her figure out, you know, an issue she was having with stories and why some stories were working and some stories weren't working. And I was in the midst of trying to start the sequel to the book I'm writing. I just finished writing and nothing was working for me. So I thought, well, you know, like, what the heck? I could also get that copy of that on Libby. I will just give it a try. And in essence, the concept behind this book is the concept of universal fantasy. So in essence, like, certain concepts just call to us as humans. And it's the reason why certain stories have themes that we just come back to over and over and over again. Why are we always willing to see yet another Beauty and the Beast? Why do we always want to hear about Cinderella? Why is Grey's Anatomy on for like 20 years? You know, like, what is it about these stories that just keep us coming back, even though we know what's going to happen. We know, like, you're there telling me you're doing a Beauty and the Beast rewrite and there's a happy ending, and yet we're still ready to buy it. Our society tells itself and find ways to tap into that, like, universal needs that we as humans have, and how that introduces itself into stories over and over again. So for me, this book just really worked because it really helped me kind of break past that barrier. And I did end up completely rewriting the story that I was telling, so that I could make, in essence, I needed to make the character more relatable. She was not relatable. And, that is a huge part of it, although not the only part. It is not just a matter of like, oh, write relatable characters, So the book does several case studies of different books, fairy tales, popular books, popular TV shows, explaining the difference between stories that work and stories that don't. She does give a number of examples of her own books, which I did appreciate because, like, if you're going to do something like this, I kind of want to see the goods, I kind of want to see that it worked for you. And so I immediately went and looked her up, and specifically the books that she was saying, like, she's written a lot. She's kind of a rapid publisher. Specifically the books that she developed this theory off of when she realized, like, she stepped back and looked at, like, oh, what books am I publishing that are selling really well, and what books am I publishing that aren't selling well, and, like, comparing those two and trying to understand what was working and how to, like, make sure that her books worked. And so I did go and look her up, and she does have several books with thousands of reviews, which, as a self-published author, you have to be aware that, like, 1,500 to 2,000 reviews is amazing. Like, because that means, like, you have thousands upon thousands of more reads. And as a self-published author, you're doing good. So I do believe her when she says this works, because she's like, hey, here's the books that I actually, like, put effort into making sure that this was applied to, and here's what happened, and it worked. So excellent. Good way to start how I wrote a book like this. You should as well. I do think that, some people might have an issue with, like, how formulaic she likes things to be, but I feel like there's a lot of room to play in these formulas that she's talking about as well. In terms of, like, her writing style versus Stephen King's writing style, obviously drastically different, right? King is a pantser. He starts with a situation and then just sits down and starts writing about it. He does not do any plotting. He doesn't try to, like, know what the end of the story is. That is his thing. Her thing is she writes out the entire outline, scene by scene, and makes sure that every scene has an element that she feels will relate to her reader, so that she can not just, like, get them in the door, but carry them through all the way to the end, right? Because she's a Kindle Unlimited author, which means that every page that someone reads, she gets paid. So, and the thing is, I feel like with the creative process, there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. You have to kind of find the place that you exist on this scale. And so, like, for me, I'm kind of somewhere in between. I do a level of plotting, and this 7-figure fiction did help me really break through with some issues I was having that I ended up using outlining for to kind of, like, get me over that hill. But at the same time, like, I don't know where everything is happening, and how I'm going to draw everything to a close. And so, like, I am doing a little bit of a Stephen King with the rest of the book and just being like, I'm going to sit down and see where this happens. And I think it's okay to do that. Writing is a creative process. I recently saw Brandon Sanderson being interviewed, and, like, it's a short clip, so there's no context, and that's often, like, it's not really fair to judge someone off this, but I can only judge the clip. And in his clip, he was saying, amateur writers do this, professional writers do that, and I don't actually think that's a very valid thing to say, even as someone as Brandon Sanderson, large as he is, because what you're inherently talking about is a creative process, and creative processes have to be different for each person. You can absolutely say, this worked for me, feel free to give it a try and see if it helps. But if you're out there being like, real writers don't do that, well, like, no, sometimes they do. Like, sometimes the rules do not apply. like it's a creative process. No, we're not over here fixing cars and there's like a instruction manual that's just going to make things work. So I do feel like anytime you are reading something about a creative process, you take the tools that work for you. I mean, fundamentally, when Stephen King says have good grammar, agreed. We should all have good grammar. But in terms of the creative process, like listen to what other people have to say, experiment, but don't think you're failing if it doesn't work for you, because you just need to find a process. And really, it's more the commitment to finding a process that's important rather than like this exact process worked for me. So those are the main books. I am going to throw in a honorable mention here, but I will say, especially if you're writing romance, but really I would say this, you can do this with most fiction. Seven Figure Fiction was my favorite, and it really helped, and I took a bunch of notes, and I would highly recommend it. You can get it through the library. I got it through the library. Hopefully your library has it as well. I'm going to throw in an honorable mention of the memoir And Then, and What Else by Daniel Handler, who's better known as Lemony Snicket, the creator of the series of Unfortunate Events. I love series of Unfortunate Events. I actually read it as an adult. Absolutely love it. Have the entire series. And I stumbled upon his memoir at Barnes & Noble's, and I decided I had a bunch of Audible credits, so I decided to just get it for the fun of it because I really love those books. And the reason I am not going to give you my specific rating on this is because I don't feel like I have the capacity to be impartial about this book in recommending it. And I couldn't honestly tell you if it is actually a good book because I so deeply associated with it that I know my experience with it is like very personalized. Daniel Handler suffered from a particular medical event at a very young age that is very similar to a medical event I experienced at the same age. And hearing someone talk about that experience and having gone through that, it deeply affected me to hear someone else speak about that because, we're often told to keep medical stuff quiet. And so I was like very deeply affected by being able to hear someone else speak about this. And I absolutely loved the book. I honestly don't know if it would work for anyone else. It's more a general memoir. He obviously does talk quite a bit about writing and like how he kind of developed into the writer he ended up being, what were his influences, why he thinks that he became the writer that he is versus like other types of writers. And so I do think it would have interest to other writers. I'm not sure it's specifically a book like on writing. But for me, I just personally connected with it so deeply that it was a 5-star read for me, but I could not tell you if it would be a 5-star read for a audience as large. In the way that the section on writing and on writing, any writer can probably gain from that. Many writers who are looking to write fiction could gain from 7-Figure Fiction. I don't know if anyone else will connect as deeply with and what else, but I did, and I do think that, at the very least, he is a very entertaining writer. I mean, it's Lemony Snicket, So anyway, that is all of the writing books that I have read mostly in the last month, but definitely over the last year. This is no comprehensive list by any means. These are just the books the internet or bookstores threw in my way as I was going throughout my day. So I am sure I will read more, and if I do, I will do a follow-up video. But I would love to hear your recommendations for writing books because I'm always open to reading more. Or if you have writing books that you don't recommend and I should stay away from, I would also be completely open to hearing that because we all trying to get writing done here. We don't have time to waste on bad books. So yeah, please let me know in the comments and I will talk to you later.